Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell y'all something. Sit down, lean in, and get ready. Because today I'm about to drop the dating secret that nobody tells you until now. Be the right person before seeking the right person. That sounds simple, doesn't it? But the truth is, most people are out here looking for someone who checks every box, has all the qualities, brings all the love, and solves all the problems they haven't fixed in themselves. That's where dating starts to go sideways. We treat relationships like a solution to loneliness, insecurity, or even boredom, when in reality, the person you're looking for can't fill the holes you've been ignoring. It's easy to point fingers at what others aren't giving you, but it's a lot harder to ask yourself what you're actually bringing to the table. A lot of folks say they want loyalty, honesty, consistency, but are they showing up with those same traits? You want someone who communicates well, but are you really ready to have honest conversations? Or are you the type to shut down, throw shade, or get defensive every time things get uncomfortable? That's the thing people miss. We want our partner to come healed, whole, emotionally intelligent, with a savings account, gym membership, and Sunday morning faith. But if we're real about it, we haven't even done half the work we expect from someone else. Or being the right person isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware. It's about knowing your patterns, owning your baggage, and having the courage to work through it. That's maturity. You can't keep bringing old pain into new connections and expect things to work out differently. If you haven't taken time to heal from your last situation, if you're still bitter, still stalking your ex, still scared of being vulnerable, you're not ready to receive what you're praying for. And that's not judgment. That's just real talk. Relationships are mirrors. Whatever's unresolved in you, it will show up. You can mask it with charm, good looks, or smooth talk. But eventually, your truth will surface. That's why it's so important to slow down and take inventory of your own heart. What are your values? What are your non-negotiables? What triggers you and why? Most people can't answer that. Yet they're out here mixing lives with people who don't even align with their spirit. That's how heartbreak happens. Not because people are bad, but because people are unprepared. Being the right person also means holding yourself accountable. It means not blaming your past for every flaw you refuse to change. Yes, you've been hurt. Yes, you've been disappointed. But now what? Are you going to carry that pain like a badge of honor? Or are you going to grow from it? Because healing doesn't mean you forget. It means you learn. It means you evolve. It means you start choosing from a place of peace instead of desperation. And once you get to that place, everything shifts. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't fall for potential. You don't mistake chemistry for connection. You're not impressed by surface anymore. You're focused on substance. You know what you deserve because you've become what you seek. And that's when the right kind of love shows up. Not because you begged for it, chased it, or forced it, but because you finally attracted by living in alignment with it. Love is a mirror, not a rescue mission. That one truth right there could save people a whole lot of heart attack if they understood it early. Too many of us go into relationships thinking we're going to fix somebody, heal somebody, or be somebody's savior. We fall in love with potential instead of reality. We see someone's brokenness and we try to patch it up with our love, our time, our energy, believing that if we just love them hard enough, they'll become the person we want them to be. But that's not how love works. That's not your job. Love isn't supposed to be a rehab center or a repair shop. It's supposed to be a reflection. When you look at the person you're dating, 9 times out of 10, they reflect something that's either healed or unhealed in you. That's the part people don't always want to face. You attract where you are. So if you keep finding yourself in toxic, one-sided, emotionally draining relationships, you have to stop asking, what's wrong with them? And start asking, what's going on with me that keeps drawing me to this? That question right there, that's the game changer. Because the truth is, the people who show up in your life often mirror your own self-worth. Even if you don't realize it, if deep down you don't believe you deserve love, you'll accept crumbs and call it a meal. If you're afraid of being alone, you'll hold on to anything just so you don't have to face yourself. The mirror don't lie. It shows you your patterns. It reveals your triggers. It forces you to confront what you've been avoiding. And if you're paying attention, you'll start to realize that love keeps bringing you the same lesson until you finally learn it. Maybe it's learning how to set boundaries. Maybe it's learning to walk away. Maybe it's learning that you don't need to be needed to feel worthy. Whatever the case is, love is always trying to teach you something about yourself. But you can't get the lesson if you're always trying to save someone else. That's not love. That's codependency. That's control. That's fear in disguise. What makes this even more real is when you finally take that step back and look at your history. You start to notice the patterns. Different names, different faces, but the same story, the same emotional roller coaster, the same confusion, the same feeling of giving more than you get. That's not coincidence. That's reflection. Love is trying to show you that you're the common denominator, not in a way that shames you, but in a way that calls you to grow. Because once you understand the mirror, you start showing up differently. You're trying to rescue people. You stop falling for chaos. You stop confusing struggle with connection. And what happens then is powerful. You start loving from a place of wholeness, not emptiness. You don't see your partner as a project. You see them as a partner. You don't expect them to complete you because you already did the work to complete yourself. That's when love becomes real. That's when it becomes healthy. That's when it becomes mutual. But it only happens when you stop looking for someone to save and start looking at what love is trying to reflect back to you. Heal before you date. That right there could save a whole generation of broken hearts if people really took it seriously. But most folks don't. What happens instead is people jump from one relationship to the next, dragging their wounds behind them like carry-on luggage, never unpacking, never sitting with the pain. If you give open, that the next person will somehow make them forget the last. That's not healing, that's escaping. And the problem with escaping is you never really deal with what's been done to you, or worse, what you've done to yourself. Healing takes time. It takes honesty. It takes stillness. And most of all, it takes responsibility. Not blame, not guilt, but owning your part in what broke, even if your part was staying too long in something that didn't serve you. And when you don't heal, you end up turning relationships into battlefields. You start reacting to your partner based on what your ex did. You assume lies where there's honesty. You expect abandonment where there's consistency. You start sabotaging something good because your heart is still on edge, still waiting for the worst, still bracing for pain. That's how good connections get ruined. Not because they weren't real, but because you weren't ready to receive them. And healing is about learning how to trust again. Not just other people, but yourself. It's about getting to the point where you can look at love and not flinch, where you can speak your truth without trembling, where you can be open without fearing you'll break. Unhealed people love through a filter of fear. They withhold. They manipulate. They try to control outcomes. They overthink every word, every silence, every pause in communication. Because they're not loving from peace. They're loving from panic. They're not present. They're stuck in the past. And the person dating them ends up paying the price for damage they didn't cause. That's not fair to you. And it's not fair to them. If you haven't taken time to process what hurt you, to feel it, grieve it, release it, then you're not dating, you're distracting yourself. A healing before you date also means you stop looking at love as the thing that will save you. Love isn't a fix for your self-esteem. It's not a cure for your loneliness. It's not a trophy for your trauma. When you heal, you don't enter relationships from a place of lack. You're not begging for attention. You're not craving constant validation. You're not afraid to be alone because you know how to enjoy your own company. That kind of energy changes everything. It sets a standard. It creates boundaries. It attracts people who are also doing the work, who aren't looking to be rescued, but to be loved and respected. The process of healing isn't glamorous. It's not cute. It's not fun. It's lonely. It's messy. And sometimes it feels like nothing's changing. But real healing requires you to face the truth you've been avoiding, to sit with the version of yourself you've been running from, to stop numbing and start feeling. Because until you do that, every new relationship will be built on a foundation that's cracked. You can't build a future on broken ground. You have to clear the debris, tear down the walls, and rebuild with honesty, grace, and patience. That's how you create space for love to grow. That's how you stop bleeding on people who didn't cut you. That's how you make sure your next relationship doesn't have to recover from the last one. Self-worth is more attractive than looks. That's something people don't realize until they've been through enough shallow connections to understand what really holds value. See, we live in a world that puts so much emphasis on image, on abs, curves, filters, followers, designer labels, and flashy lifestyles. Social media will have you thinking that love is about who looks the best in a selfie or who can go viral for being couple goals. But when you strip all that down, when the filters fade and real life kicks in, looks alone won't keep you. What will keep you is how you carry yourself, the way you respect yourself, the standards you set, and the boundaries you hold. That's self-worth, and it radiates louder than anything you can put on your body. Someone who knows their worth doesn't beg to be chosen. They don't shrink themselves to fit into someone's expectations. They don't lose sleep over being misunderstood by people who were never meant to understand them in the first place. Self-worth is a kind of quiet power. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't chase. It attracts. It stands tall in a world that constantly tries to make people question their value. And that kind of confidence, it draws in people who recognize it, who respect it, and who won't try to dim it just to feel bigger themselves. What makes self-worth even more powerful is that it creates clarity. When you know what you bring to the table, you're not afraid to eat alone. You're not entertaining disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional games. You're not wasting energy trying to decode mixed signals or settle for someone who only shows up when it's convenient. People with strong self-worth don't stick around where they're tolerated. They move toward where they're celebrated. And they don't confuse attention with affection. Just because someone's checking on you doesn't mean they're choosing you. Self-worth knows the difference, and it doesn't fall for temporary flattery when it's holding out for something real. It also shows up in how you treat yourself. Do you speak to yourself with kindness? Do you give yourself grace when you make mistakes? Do you hold yourself accountable when necessary without tearing yourself down? Because how you treat yourself sets the tone for how others will treat you. You can't expect someone else to love you better than you love yourself. That's a setup for disappointment. When you walk in self-worth, you show people how to respect you, not through words, but through your actions, through what you tolerate, through what you walk away from, through what you no longer entertain. A person who knows their worth also isn't afraid of solitude. They're not afraid to be single. They're not out here desperately trying to find someone just to avoid sitting with themselves. Because when your worth is intact, you realize that peace is better than forced connections. You realize that your energy is sacred, your time is valuable, and your love is not to be given out carelessly. You don't seek someone to complete you. You seek someone who complements what you've already built within yourself. That kind of presence is magnetic. It's not loud. It's not boastful, but it's undeniable. At the end of the day, looks fade, bodies change, trends evolve. But a person with self-worth will always be attractive because they walk with something deeper. They know who they are. They know what they deserve. And they're not afraid to wait for it. Stop chasing. Start attracting. That's one of those lessons people usually learn the hard way. Because when it comes to love and dating, a lot of people are in hustle mode. They're out here chasing attention, chasing validation, chasing relationships that aren't even meant for them. It becomes this endless loop of trying to prove your worth, trying to convince someone to choose you, trying to hold on to people who don't value the way you deserve. And the more you chase, the more you exhaust yourself. You lose your peace. You lose your joy. And slowly, without even realizing it, you lose your sense of self. Chasing comes from a place of lack. It's rooted in insecurity, in the fear that if you don't go after it aggressively, you won't get it. It comes from the idea that love is scarce, that affection is a reward you have to earn, that being chosen is proof you matter. But real love isn't something you chase. It's not a prize waiting for you at the end of a race. It's a connection that flows. It's alignment, not pursuit. And when you're busy chasing, you don't have time to discern. You ignore the red flags. You make excuses for bad behavior. You settle for half love because you're scared of having no love. That's the trap. When you stop chasing and start attracting, everything shifts. You begin to focus inward instead of outward. You invest in your growth. You're healing your purpose. You show up for yourself in ways that don't depend on anyone else clapping for you. You get intentional with your boundaries. You say no without guilt. You detach from outcomes. And that kind of energy, It draws in people who are aligned with your value system and not just your appearance or your attention. Attraction is natural when you're in a state of flow, not force. It's not about being passive. It's about being grounded. You're not sitting around doing nothing, but you're also not bending over backwards to make something work that's clearly not right for you. Attraction is powerful because it's based on authenticity. When you're rooted in who you are, you don't have to perform. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to morph into what you think someone else wants. You attract people who are drawn to your truth, not your persona. And those are the connections that actually last because you're not building on pretense. You're building on alignment. Chasing often leads to one-sided dynamics. It puts you in a position where you're always the one initiating, always the one proving, always the one doing the emotional labor. Attraction brings balance. It brings mutual effort. It brings ease. There's also something to be said about the kind of peace that comes when you stop running after things and people that don't serve you. You start to realize that not every opportunity is for you, and that's okay. You don't have to chase closure. You don't have to chase commitment. You don't have to convince anyone to see your value. When you carry yourself with self-respect and clarity, what's meant for you will recognize you. You won't have to beg for it, chase it, or force it to stay. That's not arrogance. That's self-assurance. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows that the right connection doesn't come from pressure, it comes from alignment. It's easy to get caught in the idea that love is about pursuit, that the more you chase, the more it proves you care. But that's not love. That's desperation wearing a disguise. Real love meets you where you are. It sees you, chooses you, and matches your energy without games, without manipulation, without emotional gymnastics. And the moment you stop chasing and start attracting is the moment you start calling in something deeper, something stable, something real. Real love starts with knowing yourself. Before you can even think about building something meaningful with another person, you got to get clear on who you are. And not just on the surface. Beyond your job title, your hobbies, your Instagram bio, you've got to deeper into your fears, your dreams, your values, your wounds, your patterns. Because if you don't know what you truly want and what you truly need, you'll keep accepting anything that looks good for a moment, but doesn't feed you long term. You'll keep confusing chemistry for compatibility, attention for affection, and potential for partnership. And eventually, that catches up to you. A lot of people enter relationships without a solid sense of self. They shapeshift into what think the other person wants. They hide parts of themselves to seem more likable. They tolerate things that don't sit right in their spirit just to avoid conflict or rejection. And in doing that, they lose themselves. They become passengers in their own lives, riding along with someone else's direction because they never defined their own. But love, real love, requires you to be rooted. It requires you to be authentic because only when you show up as your full self can you truly connect with someone in a way that's deep, honest, and lasting. Knowing yourself means understanding your triggers and taking responsibility for them. It means recognizing what part of your pain belongs to your past and what part is showing up in the present. It means knowing the difference between your intuition and your insecurity. It's about asking yourself hard questions and answering them without flinching. What are you afraid of? What did you believe about love? Where did you learn those beliefs? Are they even true? That level of self-awareness is what builds emotional maturity, and emotional maturity is the foundation of real love. Without it, relationships turn into cycles of confusion, projection, and unmet expectations. When you know yourself, you stop settling, you stop shrinking, you stop chasing people who don't see you, and you stop trying to convince someone to stay when their energy says they're already gone. You walk away from situations that compromise your peace. You protect your boundaries without apology. You love yourself enough to wait for what aligns instead of forcing what doesn't. And that's not bitterness. That's wisdom. That's growth. That's clarity. You also start to communicate differently. You speak up instead of shutting down. You express needs instead of expecting people to read your mind. And you apologize when you're wrong. And you don't take accountability as an attack on your character. You're able to hold space for someone else's feelings without making everything about you. That kind of self-knowing leads to self-regulation. And that's what allows love to thrive. Because when both people know who they are, They don't need to complete each other. They get to complement each other. And that's where the magic happens. So many people are out here are looking for the one, but the real secret is becoming the one for yourself first. You have to do the work of knowing your worth, understanding your value, standing in your truth, and healing the parts of you that keep attracting confusion. When you do that, you don't have to force love. You don't have to chase it. You become it. You live it. And that kind of love, that's the love that finds you, sees you, chooses you, and stays.